We get a major report from Elliotte Friedman that players like Dakota Joshua might have a huge market going into free agency, and this is not good news for the Vancouver Canucks. And Allen Walsh, Hronek's agent, speaks out on the contract. We'll get into that later on this episode. Before I start, I just want to say shout out to everyone that is subscribed. I say this a lot, but we are trying to reach 3,000 before the NHL draft. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. We'll be here all season long giving you updates from around the Canucks. With that, let's hop straight into the first topic today, which is concerning Dakota Joshua news. Now, obviously, we get a report from Elliotte Friedman. The market is good for the heavier depth forwards. Like I heard those four names, Dakota Joshua, William Carrier, and it kind of goes on. Like the market for those four guys is going to be really good. Now, first off, I want to say, obviously Dakota Joshua was in for a payday on his last contract. But the problem with this is, and with so many teams looking at players like Dakota Joshua, William Carrier, and such on, it's going to be hard for the Canucks to really convince him to take a cheaper contract with them. When you do look at Dakota Joshua, obviously he had a career year with the Canucks this year. 63 games played, 18 goals, 14 assists, 32 points. He was a plus 19, which is second in his career being, the best in his career with a plus 19. You've seen he threw 245 hits in just 63 games, 40 block shots, and he was nothing short of a absolute star for the Canucks throughout the regular season into the playoffs. Obviously, Dakota Joshua was on a line with Conor Garland, and whoever was stuck between them was an absolute just force of a line. And Griffin, what's your thoughts on the Canucks maybe losing Dakota Joshua because he might price himself out of what they can afford?
I'm honestly a little terrified, to be quite honest. I think especially where we're in a situation where we could lose Zadorov and Joshua, that is absolutely terrifying because losing Zadorov, okay, at least we have Joshua as that big body guy who's going to get the hits and going to ruffle feathers between the whistles. But if we lose Zadorov and Joshua, I am very concerned as far as the physicality of this team going forward. I know Hronek isn't too much of a physical guy compared to those two, so he would have to step up in a physical way as well. And they would definitely have to go out and get a guy like Brendan Dillon as well. You need someone who can be a physical enforcer and a big body shutdown defenseman. And if they let Zadorov walk, at least you have Joshua as a big body winger. But losing both of them, that would be a big blow. And like we've said so many times, him and Conor Garland have been the Batman and Robin of this team. They've been that dynamic duo. They've been unstoppable when they've been on the ice together. And like you said too, whoever is between them has just been so efficient. We've seen it bring out the best in Pius Suter as well, and bringing him and elevating his game. So I think Joshua is worth bringing back. If you have to let Zadorov walk, I think Joshua is someone to prioritize more just because he has that production. He can score goals. He can get hits like Zadorov can, but then you don't have to have as much of a worry as far as the pricing goes. And if you keep him on there, you do keep that chemistry with Conor Garland and whoever's going to be at that center having their game elevated.
Yeah, because the big thing when you're looking at Joshua, obviously this was a career year, but this was also a season where he went down with an injury that held him out for quite some time. So seeing a full, productive, and healthy season out of Joshua, if they do bring him back next year, it's easy to say that this guy could score 20 plus goals. It could be 25, maybe even flirt with 30 goals depending on who he's playing with. If you put him between a guy like Pye and Garland, he's going to have another explosive year. So obviously the price tag is going to be a lot bigger, but it's going to be hard, and it's hard bullet to bite really when you have so many other players to sign. Dakota Joshua being at 28, obviously if you sign him to say a 5-year contract at 3.5 per year, you are getting him through his prime. But then you're going to look at, like Griffin was saying, you might have to move on from a guy like Nikita Zadorov, maybe a guy like Tyler Myers, to bring back a guy like Dakota Joshua. The biggest thing is we did kind of talk about Brendan Dillon being a great replacement for a guy like Zadorov, but I think the Canucks have a guy that could kind of replace a guy like Joshua in Podkolzin. When you look at Podkolzin, this guy was a human wrecking ball running around the ice. If you wanted to search up his stats and see how many hits he was having, I think it was crazy, like 18 hits in a 7-game span. He was an absolute force when playing with the Canucks, and when he was playing with Abbotsford, he looked very good as well. So if they do end up losing Dakota Joshua, obviously this is going to be a big thing that's going to suck going into next season, but they still do have young pieces that can come up and hopefully fill the role a tiny bit. What are your guys' thoughts on Joshua maybe outpricing himself? How much would you give him? What's the max you would give him to keep him on this team, with especially with so many free agents and one RFA left to be signed, where the Canucks have been quite quiet so far, which is even more concerning? Let us know down in the comments. But with that, let's hop straight into the second topic, which is Allen Walsh speaks out. And obviously, Allen Walsh is Hronek's agent. He loves Vancouver, Allen Walsh said. The organization from the time that he was traded, when they were a non-playoff team, and now they're just a playoff team, but legitimate contender. He loves the guys. I think he has a great respect for the coaches, and he loves the city. Obviously, with Hronek had a career year, 81 games played, 48 points, 104 hits, 87 blocks. He wasn't super productive in the playoffs, but this was a guy that almost played 24 minutes time on ice. And listen, we've all talked about maybe moving on from Hronek, bringing back guys like Joshua. I mean, you're looking at the screenshot, you can see how many people need to be signed, but it's so hard to replace a top two defenseman, a guy that has the chemistry with a guy like Hughes, a guy that has shown in the regular season that he can produce. At the age of 26, it's going to be hard to look at this and say, hey, let's bring him into arbitration, let's get 1 year, and let's walk him into being a UFA. Obviously, like I said with Hronek, this guy was a second-round pick by Detroit, and just at 26, he's still young. He still has time to development, grow with Quinn Hughes. He's coming off a contract of just under $5 million. It's 4.4, so he is looking for a big payday. Maybe this is $7 million, maybe this is $8 million. But Griffin, what's your thoughts on this with Hronek? Do you think they're going to bring him back? And are you fine letting a guy like Nikita Zadorov walk to bring Hronek back? Because the more I'm thinking about it, I think this is the direction they might go in.
I agree with you. I think it could be the direction they go in. And if you had asked me this question maybe a month ago when there was the talks of Martin Nikas, I would have probably said that, yeah, he's absolutely going to move on from Vancouver and be shipped out, especially when the end of year media availability went the way it did for him. I know he was just being honest up there, but it's just the way it came off. It seemed like he was just on his way out. I'm not saying that he was, but it seemed a bit that way. However, with this news coming out where he does love Vancouver, it's reassuring to see that, where he does seem to want to stay. And if he hasn't priced himself out as much as Zadorov has, I think Vancouver is looking at a situation where they might be able to keep him and Joshua and letting Zadorov walk. I know it would suck to see Zadorov walk, like we've said many, many times, but if you're able to keep Hronek and Joshua, where Joshua, had he not gotten hurt, he probably would have led the league in hits this year. He led the league in hits before he got hurt, so I think he probably would have finished in that top spot, maybe absolutely top three without question. And I think if Hronek can continue to build, like you said, he's young, he's still growing as a player, and he's having his best years with Vancouver, and especially now that they're a team that's not only on the rise, but they're at the dance, they're there, they have their ticket. So I think it's a matter of time before they're back there, and I think he would love to be on that train with them. It's just that he can't be a passenger on that train. He has to be a contributor and get them points when they need him to. So if he's able to do that with Joshua and grow on that, I think they can make up the physical presence that Zadorov has while having two players instead of one.
Yeah, because you said it great. And I mean, when you're really looking at this at the defenseman, I understand playing a guy that's left-handed on the right side might not be the worst thing to do, but you like to keep the strong dominant hand on the boards to make sure you can catch the puck, throw it up the boards, get it out of your zone. So if you are looking at just lefties on the left side, obviously Quinn Hughes and Soucy are the two guys signed there. So if you do bring in a guy like Brendan Dillon for even half the price of what Zadorov is asking, yes, you lose a bit of physicality, but you're still bringing a shutdown pairing defenseman. Then you still need to fill out the right side. A guy like Noah Juleson, I think, can perfectly fill in with a guy like Brendan Dillon on the third pairing. You bring a guy like Tyler Myers back to play on the right side, and if you let a guy like Hronek walk, then you're stuck in the situation of just trying to find another guy to come back and play with Hughes. I think you got the chemistry. You have a young 26-year-old in your grasp. You have him as the RFA. They have to keep him. They can bring him to arbitration, give him the 1 year year, but then you walk him to free agency. I think this is the time you give him a deal. This could be a 2 or 3 year deal. It could be a 6-year deal. But I think you finally have that top 2 defenseman to play with Quinn Hughes, and I don't think they can drop this and fumble the bag on it. I mean, when you see Patrik Allvin just speaking on it at the end of the year presser as well, I think they played really well together. 2 good puck-moving defensemen. We expressed to Phil that we wanted to keep him here and be a part of him moving forward, and we'll see if we get the deal done. He is an RFA, so we have control of him for another year. So what's your guys' thoughts on this? Would you rather keep a guy like Zadorov? Would you rather bring in a guy like Brendan Dillon at half the cost to keep Hronek, a guy that's shown he can play with Quinn Hughes, a guy that's going to develop more and grow in the system just at the age of 26? I mean, when you do look at a Quinn Hughes, it's just 2 years younger. So these could be your top 2 defensemen for the future instead of keeping on a guy like Zadorov who is getting into the middle of his career. Let us know down in the comments. But speaking of comments, let's get into everyone's favorite topic, and that is comment of the day. Comment today comes from the Botch guy. He said, I just really want to say, really enjoyed your content recently, and shout out to Botch. Obviously, we try to put out the best content we can. We love reading the comments, and seeing all the positivity is so nice. If you want to be featured on the next episode like Botch was, make sure to go down, leave a comment. We'll be doing another video tomorrow, so you could be featured as comment of the day. While you're down there, share this with your friends, leave a like, subscribe. We're trying to hit the 3,000 before the NHL draft. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffin. Take care.